Okay, I was going to cover the account in regards to billing and cost management. Now, there will be services today you will come across. Some of the names which you haven't used or you may have came across during the course. And it's just about how you actually manage all this. Is going to be a very crucial part about being a solution architect. So billing and cost management is something you have to actually look into very first when you design this architecture, how we are going to control all the budgets, all how you're going to make all the payments, and the whole actually billing life cycle itself. So when you create a free trial account, you create which is like signed up for free for 12 months. You can use number of AWS services for free as long as you haven't actually surpassed the allocated usage limit. Some of the new services which they have included, they are now chargeable. So make sure when you do a testing, they actually charge you very less amount, but still actually make sure that you are not paying, it's not running in the background. So always try to stop them. The free tier actually help you stay within the limits. You can track your free tier usage and set a billing alarm as well with AWS budgets. So the first thing I always try to tell people is to go and set some budget. That okay, I don't want to pass the budget limit for more than $10 or maybe £10 or something. I always try to have about £10. I accidentally I didn't knew about this before when I started AWS last year in 2018 at them, and I didn't set the budget, and I had a cost of about $250 approximately, something between that range overall in the 12 months period. So yeah, this is something which we definitely all recommend you go on and set it up. Now, how there are some tips and tricks in order to make sure that you are not actually getting extra cost, like let's say resources. When you design all these EC2 instances, it's not something actually go in and just design and just start running, deploy all the services, deploy all your softwares and everything, and it will it keeps running in the background, and you will not realize that okay, you're incurring so much cost. So the first tip which I came across during my big data cycles was I used to actually stop the EC2 and RDS instances in not production instance. So non-production, all the things I used to stop on Friday evening, and they restart on Monday morning, 1 hour before the start time. So let's say the people start coming in around 8 o'clock. So I have got a scheduler which I use to start all the services right from 7 o'clock. So they catch up all the queues and messaging and everything. So for non-production is definitely something which I will recommend is AWS instance schedulers. If you note it down, because I want you to go away and actually try these things: AWS instance schedulers, AWS budget. I want you guys to actually do some hands-on in there and see actually what you come across. Go on Google and try to research how people are actually using this services of AWS in their real-time use case. So all the resources which are running on evenings and weekends and holidays, just turn it off. This is the first step. You can actually save some billing on the cost management side. Redshift clusters. There are many non-critical, non-mission critical environments. You can Redshift has this ability of you can pause and resume clusters at any time, and you can also do elastic resize as well. So with this ability, I always try to use this Redcliffe clusters. I'll always try to pause it. I don't stop it, because what happens is with some of the with some of the instances as well, there is always this messaging coming in and out all the time. If you stop the instance, the messages will also stop. It will actually try to hit for certain retries, and then it will start it failing completely. We don't want that to fail. We have to set policies in messaging queues accordingly, that okay, if you are not able to hit the EC2 instance for certain amount of time, they will try to gather this queues in certain instance somewhere, and then when the EC2 instance is or the cluster is back up and running, it will start sending the messages again. That is why I always this do 1 hour before the start time of the office. I always do 1 hour gap there. I start my cluster, and it catches up all the messages, because there are so many, even like there are so many um, user data as well. When you boot up these instances, some of them, they've got so much user data in there that it will start picking up all the queries which I've created in the user data, and it will start generating all the patches and updates and everything. It will catch up everything. It takes about an hour, sometimes more as well. So you have to analyze in your infrastructure that how much time beforehand you want to take in order to start the cluster. And you don't have to manually do it, just use a instant scheduler in order to use this. So
Kaushal,
yes.
sorry, just one question. Are you sharing something?
No, I'm not sharing anything.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have anything. It's something which is, this is very theoretical part,
That's okay.
and you hands-on is something you have to go out and do it on yourself. Something on the AWS console, there is budgeting, AWS budget, so you'll have to explore that. I can open the console and just give me a couple of minutes. I'll just continue giving the information first of all.
Oh, good.
And I'll share you where the services you can find.
Okay.
The third part is S3. Now S3 is very, very heavily used in the clusters. Anywhere you go in terms of data storing, S3 is heavily used. Like big data, machine learning, it is always S3. Now there is something, a service called S3 intelligent tiering. So if you enable that, what it does is it now if you are, let's say, using S3 as log a standard storage class, it will take up to long time in order to consume the storage, and you will not realize that okay, the amount of storage you have got, there is so much of extra space which you have got. Let's say there is a 30 gig of storage, you are only using 10 gig, but you are still paying the price of 30 gig. If you enable in S3 intelligent storing, you'll be only paying price for the 10 gig, the amount of storage you have actually occupied and are using. That is the amount of amount you're going to pay to AWS. So that is another tip of actually saving money by enabling S3 intelligent tiering. Now there is something which I always been asked. Okay, it's Kaushal, we have done this enabling since about a week now and not able to see any savings. Okay, those, most of the services, when you enable all this cost budgeting and things, it will take up to 30 days to realize that okay, how much money you are saving. So you will not something instantly realize that okay, from next day, okay, you are starting got cost saving in terms of storage, or maybe using EC2 clusters, or maybe DynamoDB tables and everything. So it takes some time, but these are just the tips. Once again, you have to just note it down, and when you're creating the cluster, make sure you actually go through these tips in order to allocate the the cost saving, and even the budgeting as well. The other part is regarding the database. Now people use RDS, DynamoDB, Aurora, different kind of databases. Once again, as a solution architect, it is your responsibility to actually analyze okay, how, which are the database which can use and which can be cost saving as well. I normally use DynamoDB in the big data thing. There is this on-demand capacity mode within DynamoDB. Not many solution architect people know this. If you ask a developer, then he might be able to tell you, but he doesn't actually work on the cash cost saving side. So he will never actually come across this term. It is not his job as well. And sometimes he will say, okay, it's not my job. I'm hands up. It's you should have thought about it. So this is on-demand capacity mode, and if you turn that on, it actually enables all the, according to the tables you have created, the number of tables and the queries and everything you have created, you'll only pay for the capacity of those tables you have actually using on DynamoDB. So that's the fourth tip. Now underutilized instances, there is EC2 instance. We find so many instances those are created by the number of architects, and they are just sitting there, they are just not doing anything. You can use a service called AWS Cost Explorer in order to do the resource optimization. So there are also, what will happen is people have created so many instances, they don't know okay, I want this M4 large, but then when they start doing the practicals on it, it will work and everything fine, but you can actually use a similar smaller instance with a little bit less specs to do the same amount of job in maybe some more time. But you're saving a huge cost by selecting a smaller instance than a larger instance. So AWS Cost Explorer is very good tool which I always use. If someone is saying, okay, I've got this use case and I want to I want to have a certain EC2 instance where I can run this number of jobs and my performance is not impacted and I can get result within certain number of time. So AWS Cost Explorer is the first thing I will always go on to find the right EC2 instance. I don't just randomly go on to select and just create the instance, because creating an instance, it doesn't take even 5 minutes nowadays. Okay, so people, let's just literally, people who are like new to this solution architect thing, they will just create and give it to you straight away. But then when the billing cost and coming in, everyone will, why are you paying so much high amount of price when you can actually use the same different EC2 instance by paying less price? So yeah, stop paying for underutilized EC2 instances. Use AWS Cost Explorer to do resource optimization. The other thing is networks now. So networks is something I have once again found so much like cleanup, or I always clean up underutilized network related resources. There are so many VPCs, there are so many Route 53s, there are so many elastic block storage, elastic IP addresses, so many are created which is not needed, literally. Okay, I want to design this network, I'm not going to use the existing, I'm going to just create the new one, because the existing will have to do some research. Okay, how are they connected, where are they connected, which resources they are using, and you have to do more analysis. Now in order to save time and not use the brain or logic, people will just create a new one. Now they don't realize that this is actually incurring a cost later on. So always there is a tool in AWS called AWS Trusted Advisor. I use this to clean up my underutilized network related usages. So Route 53, Elastic Block Storage, and Elastic IP resources, which may be able to eliminated. So resources that not are fully used, you can actually try to migrate some of these instances or maybe endpoints connected to these networks to a different to the existing network, and eliminate the one which are less in use. This is once again you'll have to work around, and it will come with experience. Now network security is one of the toughest part, I'll say. When I started the AWS journey, this was one of the toughest part for me. Even today as well, I don't work on that side too much. I always work on the storage and instances size on the database size side of things, not the network and security sides, because all these, there are so many sorry there are so many different kind of storage, different kind of network storage are connected. It's very hard to actually figure out, okay, how are this connected, and someone has created in this long time before he has left the company, and now we are stuck with it. So the new job of a solution architect is to actually find out, okay, how can we do this, how can we actually find out sometimes the documentation, there is no good enough documentation in order to actually analyze, okay, how can I do chaos on the network side. So this is first thing I always say. Two sugars. So this is always say that use up this AWS Trusted Advisor in order to do some analysis on your network related resources and do some cleanup in there. Now, once again, when you do a cleanup on network resources, you will not realize the savings instantly. It will take 7 to 14 days easily in order to, because what it does is actually go and do some historical checks before limiting the resources. It will not give you, the trusted advisor will not give you any tips and tricks straight away. It will actually go on to your networks, to your instances, to your all the services, and will do some historical checks up for 7 to 14 days minimum, and then it will give you a good side guidance in order to actually, okay, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. So this is a very good question you'll be asked in your interviews sometimes, that okay, how can you actually eliminate, or how can you do some analysis on the network related resources. So you can tell them, okay, I use AWS Trusted Advisor. Do some research, do some hands-on as well, please, and try to find out. It will be good actually. Did anyone read actually the cost, the billing side of things? I did actually send a message that please try to read something. Has anyone came across anything? Did someone read this documentation or maybe from the course and can share some info? Okay, I'll take that as no. That's okay. Choose now, and the seventh step is choose EC2 spot instances. Now, I have once again came across this part that okay, I told someone okay, create an EC2 instance. He will actually not do analysis. Okay, can we do a on-demand instance, or can we select a spot instance? You know, people always try to go on with the ready to use instances in the AMI. I try to choose spot instances. Why? There are three main reasons behind it. They are stateless, they are fault tolerant, and they are loosely coupled for workloads. Also, when you get on to a 1 year contract, you will actually this is the only downside of the spot instance. You have to go on to a contract, choose a 1 year thing. There is no upfront charges and things like that. There is lots of cost saving in there, and I always recommend. Okay, there is only one thing is it will take some time to actually load up, but that's okay. If you are saving cost, the company will be happy to for you to wait for this. Now EC2 compute saving options. So I say this spot instance as compute saving plans. So EC2 and Fargate, there are two services workloads that are always on. So if you have created all this, we have got some instances where there are Kafka and Kafka messaging always going on. So workloads are like always on. So this will with this spot instances, it provides you more flexibility across all the instance family. So I always try to choose this part. You can choose your OS compute options and everything as normal as you do in on demand. But if you want to do some cost saving, this is the best thing EC2 support instance. So please read on that part as well. The EC2 support instance. Once again, choose 1 year, no upfront, take definitely hours to implement. Saving potential is up to 50% compared to the normal EC2 instances, guys. And this is a very big thing for a company right now. There are so many companies out there who are exploring AWS. They want to actually use cloud services and find out how can we migrate their current on-premise infrastructure or services to the cloud, and they want to find out which is the best cost efficient thing for them. If you tell them this part of things 54%, this is a very huge. Now it requires 1 year commitment. This is only the downside, and the break. But there is a break-even point, which is something between I'll say 8 to 10 months approximately. So used AWS Cost Explorer once again in this term as well. If you don't know which EC2 instance or maybe which spot instance you want to go, AWS Cost Explorer is first thing you should check, and it will give you all the guidance. Now there is another thing is reserved instance. I have used reserved instance as well. It's once again on a pricing model, provides you with a discount on your usage on your specific relational database systems. Redshift as well, Elastic Cache, Elasticsearch workloads, which are always on. So these are reserved instance are mainly I have used for this particular things is relational database, Redshift clusters, Elastic Cache, Elasticsearch workloads. Once again, there is for 1 year, there is no upfront. For this reserved instance, and in the cost saving is up to 40%, 40 plus, I'll say at least 40 to 45%. So these are my basics, 7 to 8 tips and tricks which I always use if I'm told okay, I've got this use case and I want to deploy something. Initially when you are told, you only have to look for three things: storage, compute, and the cost. Now, and the database as well, and the network. But there are companies out there who have actually hired you just to look at the compute and the database side, while security is actually managed by some guys which are actually in the Linux team, or maybe a Windows team. The security, most of the companies has big companies have always got the security department separate, and there are a solution architect who look at the security realms as well. You will not be alone in order to do a architecture design. There will be teams. You will be going through back and forth. I remember one of the clusters which I designed last year. We had numbers of meetings going back and forth after, even after designing the cluster, that okay, this is what I'm planning to do, this is what the services I'm planning to include, and this is where the cost and everything is going to hit. This is the maximum, but if there is more data movement, then yes, we are looking at more pricing. But it's not going to, I would literally actually designed a graph that how much data if you input in this S3, and depending on that, currently this is the price we are paying, and by 6 months if the usage or the data storage goes high, this is the amount we will be paying. And I have never exceeded that part. And this is the something which, if you design something, just don't put it on paper in words, design a graph, which is very very good thing to do. And it will tell you, because see, not all the people who are attending the meetings are technical enough. They will be actually, and they will not be able to understand more of the logics. Like I still actually get lost in the acronyms. I hate acronyms. I was told just last week, have you used REL? REL is there is new version of REL. We want to do some upgrades and maintenance. Kaushal, can you have a look at it? Now I was like, what is REL? I was like, I was scratching my head since like, oh, for a couple of hours, and then I received an email from this guy, and he RHEL, and the the way they pronounce different countries pronounce this all these things, it's Red Hat Linux. And I was like, can you tell me Red Hat Linux? I was like scratching my head since 2 hours, like what is this service we are using, and I'm not able to figure out. So start, make a habit of using full name, not acronyms, because it will, when you go on to doing some practical things, especially in the network side. Yesterday I was looking at this lecture on LinkedIn, and there was like so many terminologies, ELB, EG, EW, and I was like getting lost. I had to literally pause it, and I was like, what is this? And like I found it's new learning always, but try to use full names instead of acronyms. It's a good habit, because when you're sitting with non-technical guys or less technical or new guys, they will have to actually, some things will go over the head because they will not be able to understand. So even the meetings, I learned this thing as well, try to use full names. It's better for note taking, it's better for non-technical people for to understand as well. And even if they don't understand, at least you have pronounced something which they can actually go out and search. So yeah, these are some of the tips and tricks I always use the cost explorer, the budgets, the billing, the whole of the payment history side of things in the AWS billing and cost management, and see what you can learn from there. There is another use case which I always find it challenging, is storage part. Now when solution architect design this storage, they sometimes underestimate this. Now, there was one instance where, a couple of years back, there was one instance where the customer wanted to transfer about 80 to 100 gig of data to S3 just for initial analysis. You have to think that once you transfer, you have to choose the storage element very, very right from the very first stage. The reason why is, once you put the storage, all the data inside AWS, in order to retrieve or do analysis, you are paying a cost for it. So for placing the data onto AWS is free, but if you want to retrieve from it, then it's a mission that you'll have to pay cost. Now this guy actually designed the storage, he placed all the data, and then realized, man, this is challenging because I'm not able to get the some of the other things which were in the messaging part of development of Kafka queues and everything. It was not working as expected. And then he goes, okay, we'll have to upgrade this, we can't use this, and we'll have to move our data from this part to this part. And I was like, do you know how much cost we are going to pay for that? Why didn't you think about this before? And at that point, he has to face number of people like line managers, directors, everyone, in order to explain why he did this wrong from the very very start, why he didn't consider, even though having the use case, why he didn't ask questions to the developers, what kind of workloads you are expecting, what kind of jobs you are earning. So you will have to have a full architecture view of each and everything, each and every component, each and every services, like even the, the files, the type of files you are going to use in the S3 bucket. Like, is this going to be .csv, JSON? How big are they going to be? So you have to actually do analysis of going very, very deep inside in order to understand the costing, in order to understand the load on the servers, in order to understand the load on the EC2 instances, the storage part, the database as well. So this is all the challenging. It looks very simple in the course as well. It is explained in a very, very simple way. Okay, you can set threshold here, you can set threshold here, you can set alarms, but there is very, very more to it. And always use these services, Cost Explorer and reserved instances model and everything. Always use the services. What have you got? And then find, okay, how much the monthly cost is going to be by linking this account. So it's a challenging part, and I always try to emphasize people to more work on this part initially, because in the exam it's not covered too much. You are not asked too many questions on this part. There is no emphasis, there is no force on this. There is more force on the learning the services. But when you are actually designing the architecture, this is the very, very first thing you'll have to keep in mind. And there are types of budgets are like cost budget, the usage budget, the RI utilization budget, like define a utilization threshold and receive alerts when your RI usage falls below certain threshold. Like people use load balancing, auto scaling, and auto scaling. Yesterday there was one more group which I saw that the auto scaling was not working. He goes, okay, I can, when the auto scaling kicks in, my number of EC2 instances goes from 2 to 5 as scheduled, but just after 6 months I realized that they are not scaling down. How, like, you have to create two policies in there. And for 6 months that guy paid that, for 5 instances he paid monies, and then realizes, okay, after 5 months, that okay, these are not scaling back, they are 5 since the time that was there was something happened, and it shooted up. You didn't design another policy to scale it down. If the usage is gone above 50%, you auto scale, you raise the number of EC2 instances, but then you have to create another policy, and then find out of the, okay, the pressure is gone below 50%, then scale it down. It's common sense. So these are all the things you will be designing. Sometimes you will only design, and the other guy will be like an engineer or support guy, will be doing and creating all these things. But this is the very, very first part, the coverage budgets itself. Budgets can be easily tracked, monthly, quarterly, yearly, but once they have created, sometimes people don't even bother to track, except the management say, okay, why send me the monthly report or send me the quarterly report, and it's easily skipped away sometimes as well. It's only the initial who are startup companies who want to explore, they will actually keep an eye on the budget. Okay, my budget is very important. I know you guys are doing something, but my budget is very important. I have to report to management. But once all this thing use cases started, people literally get lost into all the production issues and pleasing the customers on different side of things. So guys, that is very, very in short, a short description about budget. It's don't take this easily. Please do read about it, do some hands-on, and try to grow on to different use case and find out examples how people has used this AWS billing and cost management, how this all different services are used, how the complete saving plans are used, reserved instances. So yeah, um, that's what's very, very in short. I can just quickly send you a link on the WhatsApp group. You can please have a look at this site which I use for some tips and tricks. There we go. Okay, just loading up. Okay, it's a tutorials dojo. Please do have a look. There are many other tips and tricks on this website, which I always use. It will be good for your exams as well if you're going for. It's kind of a cheat sheet, I tell. Yeah, that's in short AWS billing and cost management.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Kaushal. Really appreciate your time. Wow.
So here it is. See, the use cases which I have shared are literally which are came across. I have came across. Now you will see this is my from big data point of view. You will find different challenges in different architecture. You will like something like web services, deploying application on the server. Um, so you will have to find out. You will have to do some research, and the best way you can become a very good architect is by doing a research. I always try to go on to different websites. If I come across any point in AWS, I am taking very good time. I started the course in January sometimes. I could have finished it within 4 weeks, but it is not recommended. If you want to just do it for exam purpose, just do it. You will get it within 4 weeks. You will be able to give the exam and you will pass it as well. There are plenty of cheat sheets available. There are many practice papers available. But the main idea behind becoming a very good AWS solution architect is doing a research on each and every topic. Some very simple question which I mentioned earlier this week, that I was asked a question about tags, why tags are important. See, you will never realize what side of questions you will come across, and to analyze and research on each and every topic, why are you doing this, why you're doing that, can you do it differently. So as a solution architect, it is your responsibility to go on and do some research and provide very good solutions and design graphical solutions. Customers love it. If there are graphical solutions, presentations, they will love it. But if you present them something like this kind of paragraph, a cost explorer, and that's noted down everything, they will be like, okay, they will read through it in their spare time. Graphical loves, people love graphical things. So yeah, that's from me. There are some sources here where this guy actually created all this documentation from. There are some blogs as well which Amazon has actually created in terms of cost management tips. Okay, here it is. There you go. Read through this, guys. This person has actually written about 4 or 5 blogs until now. There is also beginner's guide here on AWS. Very good graphical thing. There you go. If you explain something to a customer in this kind of reporting thing, or they will love it, man. If you want to impress someone, this is the best way to do it. This guy has got various, I think it's got about 8 series of a whole course in AWS. So whenever I study something on AWS, I also do this reading. There is end of the question, there is a quiz, and they give you certificate. Now, it will be very good if you can just get some certificates for now. If you are a little bit far away from the solution.
Thanks, Kaushal. Thank you so much. I think you covered quite in depth and a lot of practical examples how to save the cost. Some of the other things that I have come across and which had made difference is, first thing is to speak to the account manager. I was working for a direct line insurance group and they were exploring to move certain services to cloud. As part of using those cloud services, they went for AWS. So you wouldn't believe how many times, if you actually end up speaking to the account managers, the amount of discount they are willing to give. So a lot of times, if you're trying to use a new service, or if it's the first time you're doing something new on AWS or any of the cloud services, speak to the account manager, explain that you're interested in this, and ask if they can give any discounts. They would be more than willing to give a huge discount if you're a potential customer who are going to do a long-term business with them. And that's something I've seen time and again, that people usually are either hesitant or haven't explored this path. We can get some really good discounts by going this route, especially when you're using new features and functionalities. The other ones are usually more technical. I think you touched upon the auto scaling aspect. So especially for resources, either you're not sure about or you use on timed basis where there are peaks and downs. auto scaling is a key feature, and again, is have to make sure both scale in and scale out. Another significant cost usually happens around network. So CloudFront is another important one. So if you're going to have a geographically spread user base where you're going to transfer a lot of data and you're going to use S3, that's going to cost you more. Whereas if you're using CloudFront and let CloudFront handle all the data transfer from that point, it's going to have a significant impact on the network costs. Another thing to look for is always better to have a look around different regions for the services you're looking for, because sometimes you might end up using more expensive regions for the services where you can find alternate ones, which will not have huge impact on performance, but big difference on cost. For example, S3 buckets in the US West region, they usually cost about, the first gig would be free and the next would be, say, 0.09 or $10 per GB. However, if you're going to use an S3 buckets in South America, for example, it's going to cost you close to $0.25 per GB. So again, it depends on where your user base is. But again, if you're using something like CloudFront and so on, so that's the benefit of using a cloud service, right? So taking advantage of those cloud native features to consider how you can use different services across different regions and optimize cost over that. Another architectural example is using private IP address. I think in a lot of training courses, you might get used to the bad habit of using the public IP, where it's more convenient to do lots of things. But in the actual work as well, I've seen in many places where they have ended up using public IP and then using a lot of other measures and resources and time and effort to secure them. So if by design, by architecture, if you get used to using private IPs, and data transfer between private IPs are free, whereas data transfer between public IPs is, there is a cost attached to it. So by design, both it will become more secured as well as, on long term, there would be a huge savings on transfer costs. So if we are using the EC2 backup solution using EBS snapshots, I think a lot of people have used it in the past. So other than worrying about how to automate and manage those snapshots, you will also have to worry about the cost, because the cost of EBS snapshot is around 0.05 GB per month. However, if we use an S3 storage for that, the cost would be somewhere close to $0.02 per GB, which is more than half, if you like, cheaper than the EBS snapshot. So that's another key architectural decision of how you design your backup strategy, and again, what services to use for them.
Cost management and security. These are two of the very crucial areas which most of the cloud native companies, like whoever is trying to go on this path, would like to focus, because both the areas can impact the reputation, the budgets, the internal structuring of teams. A lot of things are basically involved in this. So people, sometimes I've seen the cases like the big companies or the big banks going to the market to find out the expert people in these two areas, and they are willing to pay any amount to make sure whatever they develop, the guys come in and review their existing application or the architecture, which is the cloud native architecture, and make sure that there is no loophole related to the cost management. There is no loophole related to the security. So I have a few friends who are like damn good people in these areas, and company hire them and pay them a lot of money just to do these reviews. So this is just another example how people can make money without basically knowing everything and just focusing on individual areas and become experts there, and basically that's beneficial for them let's say they just have, let's say there are people who have got just specific interest in security. They don't want to do anything else. There are people who have just interest in the networking side. So I have seen these kind of examples here where people build the career in individual, I would say, horizontal sections, and they become successful. So this is another advice I would say, if somebody has got experience and would like to just carry on the path in the specific horizontal area, then there are a lot of opportunities in the market.
Rumi has got a question here. Do you have advice on any course or certification from QA point of view? There is this about AWS testing. I don't have any knowledge about it. There are people who are outside in the market talking about AWS testing. They are testing all these automative scripts where they deploy auto scaling, deploy a number of EC2 instances by using this cloud formation script. Prakash or Gaurav, you guys have any knowledge about it?
So I can talk about from the DevOps and DevSec's points of view. So in the roadmap for the QA guys, what we have done in the past is like, if you are aware of, we have got chaos engineering. If you have heard about that, there are a couple of tooling sets which QA guys normally use to do the load testing, scale testing on AWS, GCP, Azure, everywhere. So I would definitely recommend you guys to go through the chaos engineering and the underlying tools. There is Chaos Monkey, which Netflix heavily use. There are a couple of other tools in the same verticals which are being used by Twitter. It's more kind of Snow and Flake scale testing, which they heavily do. Other than that, also from the business point of view, we have seen the BDDs being run on the underlying architecture or the cloud architecture or cloud services to make sure that all the business requirements are being fulfilled. Regarding the certification, I'm not aware of any specific QA certification. I would but definitely recommend doing the basic initial level certification on AWS, Azure, whichever cloud you want to go with, just to understand the basic architecture of how the cloud is set up, how the underlying services work, how the whole security policies and the IAM policies or any kind of profiles, how all these things work. So that once you know all these, then this is a next level of thing which you would you will be able to do specifically related to QAs, normal infrastructure testing, your business testing, or whatever.
There is AWS, try to explore Rumi AWS DevOps course, which he mentioned earlier. There is this automation part in there, which actually helps you to automate and build faster and more efficient services.
But Kaushal, that's more for like the DevOps roadmap, not for the QA. For the QA, they need the basic understanding. They don't need to understand the DevOps lifecycle. They need to understand only the underlying services. How can they deploy their load tests or scale testing tools on that? And how can, so people normally, I've seen people doing external testing, like they asked us to open the ports where they basically just ran their tests to make sure the services are according to the business needs, according to the architecture needs. So that's one example. Another thing, I've seen people running internal crawlers inside the applications which are running on your AWS infrastructure or Google infrastructure. And from there, they used to basically use third-party tooling sets to produce the report, to push the data, the QA data sets, and use it in their dashboards. So there are various ways through which QA normally do the testing. But to do that, you need to understand just the basic underlying the cloud provider services, and then you can do. Yesterday, just if anybody is interested, as Kaushal also point related to DevOps, I would definitely recommend going through the IBM Garage. So this is something which is like a different cloud, but the DevOps side is very strong in IBM. So
Is this the presentation that you shared on the native side, right? The one which you shared yesterday regarding the pipelines and all?
yes. So I would
Yes.
definitely ask you guys, if you have time, just go through that. You will understand how basically the whole cloud native engineering architecture is built with the help of these tools. And we should more focus on the CNCF projects, because that's something which is coming from the open community and have got very strong support, very strong community to help us if we have any issues, any question. There are plenty of people to help us out.
Yeah, I've just gone through it, but some of the concepts kind of I'm not from DevOps side, so has gone way above my head. But I'm trying to kind of absorb as much as I can, and I will come back with some questions on that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's as Kaushal said. I'm very happy that you shared it. We need to keep reading, keep learning the things to become experts.
That's brilliant, guys. I'm happy to do one more session during the week, in one of the evenings, because it's just taking 1 hour, so we can start covering topics as we go.
Yeah. It's just it's like Santosh here, Kaushal. It's just like, first of all, really appreciate your time. Actually, the session was really good, and the tips which you won't get from the learnings, which is really good to kind of have a session with people who are working on those technologies. My challenge is, because I'm kind of from data warehousing side, I'm kind of moving into architects. I have done solution design in the past, but on the traditional way, not using cloud. I've got little bit of exposure on cloud, but not much in the place of work where I'm doing. But again, because the chance was there for us to work, but then it was outsourced. So the whole thing has changed for me a bit. But for my self-learning, I've started it. The main challenge I'm seeing is I started with GCP, and I'm now looking into AWS. The sessions are parallel, so I'm trying to kind of get what all tips I could get from Prakash or you on the AWS side, but I'm also learning on the GCP side, which is where I can correlate stuff, and it's still early days, which is why I couldn't respond to much of the questions here. But yeah, in due time, I would be able to. So yeah, thanks very much, you guys. You're really doing a great work here. Thank you.
I think the most challenging part nowadays companies are facing is about deploying Kubernetes, creating Kubernetes cluster.
Yep.
So that is, if you got that skill, it's you ask money and they will pay you.
Right.
So containerization is definitely a booming in the cloud itself. Very less people. It's a very niche market in there for that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, first we need to get the basics right, and then start moving across.
Yeah.
Santosh, you mentioned about you're just starting on the architecture side, especially on the cloud. I think not just you, I think for anyone who wants to have a strong background and a very good understanding of the cloud capabilities when it comes to architecture, there is a very good white paper called AWS Well Architected Framework. It gives you the basic pillars, especially from a cloud perspective, and gives you the principles from an architecture point of view. What are the things we need to consider as part of design? I think one of the mistakes we all do is we straight away jump into tool sets like AWS, GCP, and all these things, which is fine. It gives you all the options to do things. But I think the general principles and the good practices of what should be done is where we need to start first, and then how to do part comes later actually.
Yes.
So I think a lot of times we do it the other way around, and then gradually over the years of doing wrong things, we learn these things. But I think now there is a very good resource that gives you that fundamental understanding of what and how a good architecture should look like. I think that you can take those principles and then gradually apply them as you learn the appropriate tool sets on whatever the cloud platform that you're learning.